I think it's Zoom giving us a hard time. Hello and welcome. We are live. I am sorry if you guys have been watching. Facebook did not notify me that we are live, but it does look like we are live now. So thank you for joining us and welcome to our session as Future and I today really dive into another realm of social emotional literacy and how it pertains to equity and diversity. My name is Evelyn Knight. For those of you who are new to our group, I am the owner and founder of Childcare Business Professionals, which is a company that helps childcare business owners and directors learn how to really automize their childcare center. Really gives you freedom. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week, you definitely need that automation in your center. I am a center owner myself. I currently have my own center. And I also have a podcast called the Childcare Business Coach, which helps just provide information for owners and directors on the business end of your childcare center. So I am going to turn it over to Future now, and Future, you can introduce yourself and let everybody know exactly what you do.
Hello, everybody. I am hoping you are rejuvenated and you took some self-care for yourself to have your cup filled up for this week over the weekend. As Evelyn said, I'm going to introduce myself. I pride myself on I am not defining myself by a title. So I like to say that I'm a parent. I have 2 kids, proudly stating that my kids were put in a preschool early child care center. So thank you to all of you for taking care of my children and for even being in this profession. And my whole being, I center on the philosophy I am because we are. So I like to do a lot of service, and I understand and know that the decisions that I make not only have an impact on myself, but have an impact on the larger realm, whether that is my own family and children, whether it's the staff and the children that I work with currently at the school district I'm at, or whether that's this whole universe. So that is one of my beliefs. And then in addition to that, I have been in the education field for over 20 years. I'm currently titled as the Director of Social and Emotional Learning at the school district I do work for now. What I do say is all of the intellectual information that I'm going to provide you are completely my own. It's not associated with my district, but if you do have questions, as Evelyn says, please, please, please reach out to me. And we just want this information to go to you so that you can have a better understanding, because at the current time, we're in unprecedented times and this social emotional learning is essential. So welcome to What the Hell is SEL? So the order of the day, and I always try to go through this, is we will just cover the definition and we'll talk about equity. Then we'll do questions from the previous episode, which was self-management, if you have any. Why should we even spend time on SEL? We'll dive into as we go through the slides. And we're going to deep dive into responsible decision-making today and why it's important in our current times and who it's important for. And then we'll discuss some possible resources that you can choose to use or not use. So the overall, what is social emotional learning? If you have no idea what it is, we've covered it every single time for 3 series. So I would say go back to the beginning and watch, because it's a building on foundation. So you have to start from the first one in order to get a true understanding of all of social emotional learning. So social emotional learning is basically the understanding of knowing and managing one's own emotions, and then being able to set and achieve your own goals, but also feeling and showing the empathy that we should be showing, especially in current times, to others, including yourself. And then that helps you to be self-aware and then to maintain those positive relationships and make more responsible decisions for the social awareness of everybody. So CASEL, which is the framework that our school district has chosen to use, they even in this time said, okay, we need to look at our stuff, and we need to look at our stuff that we've put out there for the last 20, 30 years, because even our stuff we now recognize wasn't as equitable as it should have been. So they did transform their own SEL. So Evelyn, I guess I have a question for you is, did viewers put any questions in regards to previous episodes that they wanted me to discuss? And it's okay. You could put them, you could email me, or you could put them in the chat later. That's okay. And I will try to pause and get back to it if you don't have one now.
I don't see any questions at this time, and I did not get any from the previous session. And I'll really quick too, I just want to remind everybody that I did attach the Zoom link. So if any of you guys want to jump on with us as an attendee, you can ask questions directly in the chat instead of Facebook. I am watching the Facebook group also though, so I have my phone if you guys see me looking down, just to make sure if there's any comments or questions that come in, feel free to use either platform, Zoom or your Facebook. And we love the participation. So please give us feedback, comments. We do like to see the activity. Future and I were talking, it does get lonely on this side of the camera. So we would love to get your participation.
All right. So the two things that we're covering today, because we're putting them together so that next time we have a lot of time for your questions on the last competency within the SEL wheel, are responsible decisions and then positive relationships. And I said, I need from the news to show everybody, in case you haven't seen these clips, what is going on right now in the world and why it's oh so important for people to have understanding of, are the choices I'm making building positive relationships, one, and then two, am I making a responsible decision in my actions, in my words, or in my lack thereof? So I want people to understand that. Now, I'm not going to play every single one, but I'm just going to put these up. So if you want to go find it for yourself, you can. Recently, and you could, well, it wasn't that recent, but in current times is what I will say, there was a woman and she happened to be white, and she blocked a black man who is this man right here on the screen, if you could see him. They both lived in the same building. Now, he taped for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and that's the problem that we're facing in our society. A lot of times, whether it's we don't believe the children of what they truly are trying to tell you that another child did or another child said, or we don't believe our staff members, and people have now gone to, just for equity purposes, they have to take video, which I don't even think we should be at a time that we have to do that, but some people have to do that. So he took a video and he taped this woman for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and she probably blocked him from his own, I will repeat that again, from his own building. She refused to let him into his own building. And then she was badgering him of, well, tell me what is your number, right? What floor do you live on? And he's like, I don't need to give you that information, nor should you be asking me that information. Can you please let me in the door? And then finally he got in, went to the elevator. She followed him all the way to his floor, even when he said, I'm on whatever floor. And then obviously she saw him get to his floor, followed him, obviously still thinking he didn't live there. And he put the key in the door and opened the door. And he's like, now you look real funny, don't you? Is basically what he called her out on. And then she was still asking, well, what's your name? Now, fast forward, that woman apologized, and essentially, you can see right here, because of her actions and the poor decisions that she made to not build a positive relationship for a person who actually lived in her building, she was fired from her job because the acts that she showed were completely racist and uncalled for. So that's one example. Two, we have this example in the state that I currently live in Wisconsin. We had protests, as many of you are experiencing, whatever state you're logging in from. And we had protests. And with some of those protests, even if you go look back in history and if you look at all the protests in time, college-age kids are usually at the center of getting it going and staying with it. This happened to be high school students with a mixture of adults, so it was a variety of kids, but this one kid who was a Black male, he was a high schooler, And he was walking, and a lady in the community who was in her 60s, and she happened to be a lawyer. I will repeat that again. She was a lawyer. She didn't agree with the protest, so she obviously was trying to block the people. You see her, and you could Google it yourself and take your time to watch it. You see her literally, as white people are walking by, just, saying a couple things to him. She waited purposely until a Black person, which unfortunately happened to be this Black student, waited until he got, close to her, and she literally spit in his face. Now, personally for me, that's the most degrading, one of the most degrading things that you could do, on top of, we are in the middle of COVID. So you have a person who is what some people would look up to, a lawyer, and then you also have now a child that she, one, abused, and two, in the middle of a pandemic when there's COVID, did something. So it's another demonstration of probably not a good, responsible decision. Now, this is more recent, from June 4th, 2020. Haley is a middle school student, and these are students that we are going to help to understand their identity and make them see the beauty in all, which is the basis of social emotional learning, understanding your own emotions and then understanding everybody else's, so you could empathize with them to build those relationships and make responsible decisions for the social awareness and wellness of everybody. So Haley is seen, and you could take a picture and watch it for yourself because it's 4 minutes long. Basically, her dad, a person that she lives with, and obviously as your children, right, you get these values ingrained into you from us, the educators that they see on a daily basis, and from your family and from your friends. And her dad was saying a lot of racist things. Well, she more or less was going back and forth and arguing with him on this and standing up and having her own voice. Now, the one, and I'm playing this for you because it could be, which I'm hoping it will never be, each one of you. So as the director, if you're on here, or as the owner of your early child care or preschool or daycare centers, this could be you. Now, it's in 2018, but here's the thing. In heightened times that are unprecedented, with emotions on a high, at all-time high, because people are experiencing so many things, and a lot of people have not sat with their emotions and aren't taking their own self-care to manage those emotions, to work through them. Now we see different things arising. So I'm going to play it, and I'm hoping
changed everything.
Here.
You trust these people, and I feel like I failed as a parent, as a mother.
What do you think?
Because I didn't protect him.
Last October, Danielle Lavallee and her husband Michael decided to take their son to Smarty Pants Preschool, a daycare in Bradenton. They had done their research, and others had recommended it. But it wasn't long before they began seeing signs that something wasn't right.
I just kind of brushed it off, thinking he's a 2-year-old, he's clumsy, he falls.
Then came this shocking and disturbing surveillance video. Manatee Sheriff investigators say it shows daycare worker Dallas Orfia abusing Lavallee's 2-year-old son. Investigators say Dallas appeared angry and frustrated while changing the boy's diaper. In the video, you see her lifting the toddler's legs towards his head, essentially bending the baby in half. Then detectives say Dallas puts most of her body weight on the child. This went on for 6 horrifying minutes.
Literally all her pressure is on his neck, and she keeps forcing herself down on him. You got to be some type of animal to do that.
The signs of abuse were evident. Dallas was arrested and charged with child abuse. Smarty Pants Daycare fired her, but that was it. Danielle and Michael didn't get an apology or an explanation for the 5-hour delay reporting the abuse to them. Nothing.
They neglected my son as well.
Lisa says her little boy is now in therapy and is slowly beginning to trust again, but it hasn't been easy. Danielle and Michael's warning to other parents comes right from their own personal anguish.
She's a monster. She deserves to go to jail.
Now, the lead director.
Okay. I show you this because there's kids who are experiencing many different things right now. And there's also adults who are choosing, like that woman, clearly you could see on tape, that made really poor decisions. And she made poor decisions that would not build positive relationships with anybody, with the child that she took an oath to serve, with the staff that she worked with the director, and with the owner of that daycare center. And I come to you to say, what are you putting in place in regards to social and emotional learning so that the kids do not have to feel like this child, because now this child is in therapy and probably working towards feeling psychologically safe and physically safe at any daycare, any preschool, any early childhood center that he has to go back to. So at the end of the day, on this slide, it just covers, do kids know why they made the decisions they made? Now, we as adults have to know why we make the decisions we make too. But the question is, are you then helping and modeling the students to make the decisions that they're making, or to help them on their path to making the most positive decisions that they could possibly make? At the end of the day, whether we want to see it or not, and we may think that we don't give our kids many decisions, whether you're a parent or whether you're a staff member in the classroom or the director or the owner, but kids make decisions all the time. And they make decisions to listen to you or to not listen to you. They make decisions to what clothes do I want to wear or what clothes do I not want to wear. They make the decisions of, I'm going to choose to eat this food today, or I'm not going to choose to eat this food today. They make the decisions to, do I want to be friends with this child and share and be kind and be nice and show empathy, or do I not? So the question is, what decisions are you helping all of those children to make in your classrooms? And I guess the even bigger thing would be, are you giving them choices? That would be the question that I would ask each of you to sit with. How many choices in any given day, in the 10 hours that they are with you, how many choices do each of your teachers allow those students to make? And the next thing is, are you asking why they made the decisions? Oftentimes in my years in education, I've seen educators just go straight to wanting to scold, right? Instead of teach. Directly to, that wasn't a good decision, now you go sit in the corner, okay? Or you can't play with the group, or whatever the consequences that you feel is fine. And I guess I would caution you to do that, because at the end of the day, when you go straight to here's the consequence, then the question you have to reflect on is, what have you taught the child? Okay, I'm going to give you the answer. The answer is, you probably maybe are forming the child of not to do that, but they have no idea the why. And that's why I say you have to sit with the kid and say, can we have a conversation? Can you tell me why you just did that? And it's fascinating when you actually have that conversation with them, the things that they will tell you, right? And that's why I said or probably either last week or the week prior to, it's important to do a check-in every single day when your kids get in as a group to see where kids are at. Because maybe a kid took something from a classmate in the middle of class and was aggressive in doing it, right? Or what you felt was aggressive in doing it. And maybe they did that because before they were coming to you at the center, their younger or older sibling just did that to them. So they're just mocking essentially exactly what they did, but then we have to teach them, okay, we shouldn't do this. And then let's use our words or communicate when you'd like to be able to get something from somebody else. And then the next is, if asked why they made the decision, can they tell you? A lot of times they may be able to tell you, but there's other times that they may not be able to tell you. And then that's where you start a small conversation. Now, I'm not saying you should go into a big dissertation, because kids zone out after probably a minute or so of listening to that. But we have to get them to the point of modeling and teaching them to be able to communicate with why they are making that decision. But again, is it weaved in and embedded in every single thing you do in your classrooms? And the last thing is, we have to remember as educators, whether you are the director, whether you are the owner, whether you are the actual classroom teacher, what are you teaching them? Because the mood at the top, which is the owners and the directors, sets the tone in the middle. So it's going to be impossible or really hard, unless you have real go-getter staff members who are in the classroom, to say, nobody's ever taught me this. However, I will find out how to do it myself. So that's why I say as directors and owners, then what are you doing too to teach your staff members to be able to do this in all the classes? All right. I think, and I'll say I'm at fault for doing this too. Okay. I'm going to own this one. At the end of the day, I know I do. I look at my kids as they're adults sometimes, and that they should have known better in making the decisions that they're making. And I always have to remember the human brain, right? And there's a neuroscience to everything that we are, everything that we do, every action that we make, and the thoughts that we have. And at the end of the day, it was important for me to put this up here. The human brain isn't fully developed until age 25. So even when my many years of working with high school students, I have to remember, as grown as they want to call themselves, they're not fully developed yet. And over that 25 years, we as humans, and think back to when you were a younger child, relied on our prefrontal cortex. And I put this up here because our prefrontal cortex is the rational, right? It's the rational part of our brain. And the videos I just showed you are, I don't care how old these people were, they demonstrated they weren't using the rational part of the brain. They weren't using it. So some people were in their 20s. We have a 65-year-old lady who spit in somebody's face, but they weren't making a rational decision in the time. And that obviously will cause a disarray, one, in your system, in your being yourself, but then with the relationships that you have with others, with your staff, and then for your center. So at the end of the day, research has shown that the children and teens and young adults use the amygdala. And the amygdala part of the brain, which we did learn about, I'm sure when you remember in high school, is the emotional or the reactionary part of your brain that makes decisions. So because there's a connection between our prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, the rational and the emotional, we are still basically working on our progress of what's rational, what is an emotional decision, what's not an emotional decision, and base our judgments that we have on the emotions that we're experiencing rather than considering the long-term consequences. So if you're working with a 0 to 5-year-old or 6-year-old, which you often are doing, and if you're going to go to them and say, well, why did you make that decision? Their brain's not fully developed. And you know what? They might not even be able to tell you why they made that decision because they're not even thinking about the long-term consequences. They're just in their emotional state right now. And until you could teach them what emotions they're experiencing and how to manage those emotions, they're going to keep defaulting to whatever they've done before because they don't know any other way, is what I'm going to say. So that brings us to the definition of the competency of the responsible decision-making. And responsible decision-making, as I've showed you, there's people right now, and maybe even you, I've made not some best decisions with my kids in the wake of this pandemic too. We're not making as best responsible decisions as we can. And I want everybody to be at a point where they could be proud of themselves and say, yes, I made the best decisions that I possibly could. And I stayed as rational and didn't use just only my emotions, right? I used my thought process to say I'm making the most responsible decision ever because my decisions affect many others. So responsible decision-making is the ability to make constructive and respectful choices about personal behavior, social interactions based on consideration of ethical standards, safety concerns, social norms, the realistic evaluations of consequences of various actions, and the well-being of self and others. Every single news clip that I showed you, I would say was the exact opposite per this definition of the responsible decision-making. Now, examples of what responsible decision is, what are you looking at for the collective well-being of everybody? And I'm sure there's many from the studies that I've read so far, not every daycare, preschool, early center is even back yet. So a lot of you are making decisions for the well-being, not only for the health and safety of yourself and your staff, but for your children and your families, right? So what are those decisions that you have to make and that you're processing through? What are also the ethical responsibilities that you have as owners and as directors? And then are you looking at the impact of your interpersonal impacts and then the larger being, which is the institutional impacts that those decisions are going to have? Now, this next slide is, can you help students strengthen their own connection? How do you do that once the students are now currently in, or will be coming back to your center? And I wrote different things down here. So basically it's this: discuss the power of your choices. And we stated before, every child has choices, whether or not you're looking at it that way or not, it's fact. They make many choices. They make choices to sit in the circle, maybe that you do quietly. They make choices whether you call on them to speak or to not speak. So they're making constant choices. It's, are you then explicitly teaching the students about the potential consequences, whether positive or negative? Because I don't believe in, it's not my philosophy, that we're constantly focusing on the negatives. We should celebrate the small positives, because in any given day, there's many of them. So what are the gratitude pieces? That's a practice that I believe in, and I think you should too, because it would make you just feel better as a person. So what are you explicitly teaching are the potential consequences of theirs. Now, you could be role playing in class, or bring one question up in circle time and have the kids go around and say, well, I think you should do this. And then we're having a class discussion, which is communicating, which is building community, which is so important, especially during these times, for them to hear everybody's perspective. And guess what? It's public speaking, which some people are still fearful as adults doing now. So then they get the comfortableness of being able to do that all within your classroom, because you've implemented these things. The other method that you could use is called SOTOS. It's an acronym that stands for talking about the situation. Then you discuss the options that they have. You discuss the disadvantages of making, whatever choices and options they gave you. Then you discuss the advantages. So it's basically talk through the pros and cons, and then come up with what are the possible solutions or the solution that they could do if the situation was to occur again in the future. So you then give your students the opportunity to reflect on the roles that they each play. And you could use past, I'm sure you could name probably 15 right now in your head of things that you've seen at your center of probably not the best decision that students or even staff have made. If you want to do this with your staff too, I think that would be awesome. So have everybody sit down and reflect and role play on what past decisions have we made, and what are we currently experiencing that is involving conflict and maybe poor decisions, or even great decisions. Celebrate the choices that you're making that are great too. The other thing is, the academic content that you have within your classrooms and within your buildings can challenge your students to think critically about their own morals and their own ethics. So are you getting curriculum? Are you getting books? Are you integrating videos that also do that? And an example of one is, the name of the book is called I'll Do It Book, which would cover several of these things. It's one book. You might want to look into it to invest in it, because then if each classroom that you have kids at a higher age that would be able to understand the concepts, then you could have them talking about that. The other thing is, link students' choices and actions with their future goals. Now, oftentimes, and I would say I don't like how a lot of school systems do this. In junior year, we're asking, in junior year in high school, I should be more specific, we're asking kids, well, what do you want to do? What's your future goals? Okay. They have a year until they are leaving the school system. So to me, that's too late. We should be starting early on, and we should be starting early with you, right? In the early centers to say, what are your goals? And we all know that their goals may change, but then it sets a foundation for them even thinking, what do I want to do when I get older? And then you apply that in your classroom. If you have somebody who says, well, I want to be a doctor. Okay, fine. Well, I want to be an engineer. Fine. I want to be a teacher. Whatever they say, then you could integrate that into your classroom, and you could read books, and you could do activities that are centered all around the things that they want to do, so that they could find themselves, and you give them a greater purpose of their own identity right within your classrooms. The other thing that I would add is discuss students' favorite hobbies. How well do you really know your whole child, right? Have you even taken the time to do interview with each of your students independently, or each of your families independently, that talks about what are their favorite hobbies and what are other activities that maybe they're doing outside, or things that they prefer. So I just wanted to, again, reiterate the SOTOS method. It's, you talk about the situation, then you talk about and discuss the options, Then you discuss the pros and cons, which are the advantages and the disadvantages, and then the solutions. And you could even take it one step further and you could say, okay, so here's what we have. Let's role play all the different ways that the disadvantages could go. And then let's role play all the different ways that advantages could go. So this is just one form. It's one resource that I have. It's linked because it's a resource that I have that I've built, but it's something that you could each use. The next question would be, how do I know that my how do I know if my decisions are responsible? And that's a great question, right? How do we know? So I would say how we know is this: have you engaged and reflected? Because if you're walking through life, as I say, some people are, as a walking zombie, and you just go along life and you're making all these decisions and you haven't said at the end of your day or the end of your week, let me reflect on my choices and how my choices, one, made me feel, but then how they made others feel and how it affected them and their well-being and their livelihood. It's something you probably want to go back on. You have to begin with you first. The other question would be is, have you asked for feedback? And I know I'm totally comfortable with it because my philosophy is, if I get feedback, then I know my flaws and I know the areas in where I can grow in. And oftentimes people shy away from the truth, but I look at it as the truth and the perception of others will set you free, because I could create a perception of, I think I'm wonderful. But then if people are fearful of telling me that truth, I question you to reflect on how can you grow then as an individual to be your best self? Because at the end of the day, we're in competition. I'm not in competition with Evelyn. I'm not in competition with anybody else on this Zoom call right now. I'm not in competition with any other director of SEL, with any other mom, with any other yoga instructor. I am in competition with myself. And I'm on this earth to be a better future tomorrow than I am today, and I was yesterday, and I was 5 years ago. So again, asking for feedback is not only going to be essential to you, but it's going to be essential to the people that you work with, because you're building trust then. You're saying, I value your opinion. Next, how do you feel? Decisions, oftentimes, you've experienced this because I know I have, where I literally make a decision and I either tell the person something and then I walk away and say, I shouldn't have said that, or I overcommitted something and I should have just said no. It just doesn't feel right in your body. Now, I know it took me time to get to this place, and that's why I'm saying I go back to the self-awareness piece of sitting with yourself, because you're not going to be able to know how you feel unless you've actually taken time to sit with who you are and sit through your emotions and be able to understand how they're showing up, where they're showing up, and what doesn't feel right. The other thing that I would suggest is, are you okay with taking responsibility regardless of the outcome? I'm going to repeat that one more time because I think this is essential during this time. Are you okay with taking responsibility regardless of the outcome? And I go back to the videos. I go back to the lawyer who spit in a child's face. I'll repeat that again. The lawyer, a 60-year-old, 60 something she was, I think 62, but don't quote me. A lawyer who spit in a child's face. I go back to the woman who essentially harassed a man for living in his own building. I go back to the daycare center, preschool, early childhood center worker that abused the child. So did they make responsible decisions? I would say we all agree on the answer. But then I am going to argue, I don't think they thought what the outcome would be. I really don't believe the lady who harassed the man about getting into his own building thought she would lose her job for doing that. But she did, because it was a racist action. So all the actions that you're choosing to do right now, or you're choosing not to do, will have an outcome. And some outcomes you may see immediately, some outcomes you may not. But are you willing to stand in your convictions and say, I'm taking this responsible decision that I feel is responsible because I'm standing on my values and I'm standing on my convictions? But then I go one step even backwards. Do you know what your own values and your convictions are? And if you don't, I would say then that's where we need to begin. And that's why, again, you have to go back to the base, which is the self-awareness. The last is, I so often hear, and I used to be that person, so I'll put myself out there. I was this person, and I had numerous people tell me, and I even told myself this, and it's the hamster wheel of thoughts. What thoughts do you really create in your mind? And I want people to understand, I'll argue on any given day with anybody about there is no such thing as perfection. Do I think there's such thing as excellence? Absolutely. But a lot of times people are wanting this perfect center, this perfect family. You want to be this perfect woman or man. And I push on you of what's the definition of perfect, because perfect to you is definitely going to mean perfect to somebody else. And that's why I say I'm striving for excellence, because we are essentially perfectly imperfect. And I've seen all the imperfections in recent times that I have, but I also have to stand in that beauty and say, I accept and love those things. So you have to claim the right to just be you. You don't want to be any other preschool owner or director. You want to stand in your strength and be you. So at the end of the day, I put this quote because it's super important to me. When we don't listen to our intuition, we abandon our souls. And we abandon our souls because we are afraid if we don't, others will abandon us. We've been raised to question what we know, to disconnect and discredit the authority of our gut. And I'm going to push on everybody to say, go back to your gut, because you know what your intuition is and you know what's best. So at the end of the day, I am because we are. And because we are, I am. And we are all one. And the sooner the people understand and know that, I think the sooner we will have equity, we will have social emotional learning in every single household, in every single classroom, at every single preschool center. You have to remember, identity of a person, including you and myself, affects every single person, and it affects the children that you're serving. And race, again, is always at the center of that. So I question you on how are you celebrating all these different things in your classrooms, whether these children who are of diverse backgrounds are there or are not. The wheel, Maslow's hierarchy. I put this here because the pyramid speaks to what's going on right now. Did you look at the employment rates? We have a lot of people who are unemployed. We have a lot of people who have lost their lives. So do you even know which staff members have had COVID or have experienced a death possibly, or have experienced the trauma of somebody who has had COVID or maybe has had go into the hospital? And the same with the families. And they're struggling right now for their own basic needs. So I've said this before, if they don't have their basic needs met and then they don't feel safe, like that child who went to that daycare center that was abused, right? He didn't feel, if you think he felt secure and safe after that happened, I know he didn't. And it's more than evident. And then if they don't feel belonged and loved, it's going to be hard for them to feel accomplished in your classroom and meet their highest potential, because their needs below aren't getting met. It's all a pyramid that builds on top of each other. So the next section that we're going to go into is that relationship skills. Before I go there, I just want to ask Evelyn if there was any questions before I keep pushing further.
There's no questions yet, but there is a lot of activity in the comments, just a lot of agreeing that love your quote, and just, yeah, a lot of agreement with what you've said so far.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep going, but you guys, remember, I'm a classroom teacher first. So if you need to interject, I want you to get whatever answered. So just say whatever you need to say and Evelyn will pause me. All right. So at the end of the day, we're moving on to relationship skills. And I want you to think about yourself. And I want you to think about yourself because when I went into COVID, or when I was forced, when I was forced to go into COVID. Okay. When I was forced to go into COVID, immediately that first week I said, okay, how do I want, because I'm going to be at home now, right? I'm going to be at home with my two kids. And I said, how do I want my kids to remember this? Because at the end of the day, this will be in history books, whether you want to say it will or not, people will remember this. We will go down in history with this. So I know these are stories that I will get to talk to my kids when they get older about, and I will get to talk to my grandkids about. So I said, how do I want to be remembered? And I wanted my kids to remember me by, my mommy showed lots of resilience, and we were laughing and we loved each other, and we might've got on each other's nerves, but we did it, right? We played off of each other's strengths and we played off of each other's beauties, and we saw so many different milestones that took place. I'll give you an example. My daughter, who is 8, could cook 3 things. And I'm not saying like cereal in a bowl. I'm saying she could cook 3 things from scratch. French toast, which is super huge, scrambled eggs, huge, and grilled cheese. That's awesome for an 8-year-old, all because we practiced during this time. But COVID afforded me that blessing and that opportunity. So I'm saying to you, of what relationship skills did you implement, and what relationships did you build during this time, and what relationships did you, I don't want to say completely break, but I do want to say, did you hurt some relationships because of the actions that you took from this time? So the relationship skills definition is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse, let me repeat that again, diverse individuals and groups. This includes communicating clearly, because oftentimes I do this with my husband, right? I expect him to be a mind reader, which is awful. And he'll say that to me. He's like, future, you expect me to be a mind reader. And sometimes I do expect him to just know, but we have to communicate clearly. If you want something, then just say that to them. The other thing is listening. Oftentimes we are up here in our heads. And that's why I tell people, please, like, call me if you want to work with me. You have to be present. And people, I've said this before, are so focused on the past. They're so focused on the future that they miss all the beautiful moments that are right here, right now. See, that moment just fleeted. That's how quick it goes by. So are you listening actively, or are you listening to then reply and say something else to somebody, which is not actively listening? Next is cooperating. There's been lots of times where I had to cooperate with my husband, with my children during this time, because it was a give and take. That's what a relationship is. The next is resisting inappropriate social pressures. So there's lots of pressures right now. Pressures of, you have to stay in your house. So how many people are saying, well, I'm not going to listen to what they're saying, but it's for the safety of everybody, right? So I know you're getting social pressures. What are those social pressures? The social pressures may be, hey, when are you opening up your center? Or you should be closing your center. There's pressures everywhere on the personal and professional level. What social pressures are you getting? And then what skills are you applying to that pressure? The next is negotiating conflict constructively. I'm sure you've had numerous parents, whatever decision you made right now in this time frame, that you unfortunately had to get into conflict. And conflict because either way, whether you opened or stay closed or the exact opposite, parents and guardians didn't approve and believe what you were choosing to do. So you had to be able to negotiate the conflict constructively, in addition to seeking and offering help when needed. I will stand here and raise my hand that I am that strong, independent woman that I don't need help from nobody. And the reality is this was a time where I said, you know what? I do need help from other people, but I always want to do it on my own. And the reality is it takes courage and it takes being vulnerable to sit there and raise your hand and say, I got to tap myself out, right? I need help, and I need help right now. And can you help me? And the scientific research proves that when you give, when you do random acts of kindness, or whenever you give, you feel 10 times better yourself. And the effects of that last days and months sometimes. So when you are giving help to somebody, it's okay. And even if you're asking, that's okay too, because they're getting something out of it. So I want everybody to remember that. And then the examples of how it ties into equity is just the collaboration and the cultural competencies. And I know some people have shied away from different relationships, especially of maybe diverse individuals. And I would say, I'm going to push you on, why are you backing up from those? And why aren't you pushing yourself in to just get a better understanding and view of the world? The next is essential relationship skills. And I put these because I think they're essential to any relationship skills, which we so need right now. And we need that for ourselves, with our staff, with our spouses, with our own children, with the families, and with the children that we serve. And the first essential skill in that is communication. You can't assume your families know what's going on if you have not communicated with them, right? People are not mind readers. So how much communication are you doing? And consistently doing that communication. It shouldn't be, oh, well, we sent out one email and then you expect people to see it and read it. The reality is I've gotten lots of emails from the school that my kids go to. And some of them I'm like, I'm just bombarded. I can't look at it. So that one email may have gotten overlooked because I'm super busy. So I would say, don't forget to keep communicating whatever your message is. Then the other piece is the social engagement. So how are you engaging the people that you're serving? Are you saying, hey, we could have family meetings, or we could have staff meetings? We just want to hear, and we care, and we value you, and we trust you. So we want to hear more, because at the end of the day, relationships are building on trust, and that trust is hard to get back once it's lost. So it comes down to a teamwork, and that teamwork can be academic and it could be fun, but you have to remember at the end of the day, you are truly all in this together. And how are you working together to build those relationships to best serve the students that you have to serve and you've been called to serve every single day? So educators have to intentionally and explicitly teach students these certain skills. Now, you say, well, why do I need to have positive relationships? There's many benefits. There's benefits of positive relationships, and these are just to name a few. So I said, let me put them down so we could discuss it. Your stress level, right? Right now, you have to worry about your own mental sanity, because I keep saying this, we're in a mental marathon. And if you can't be sane up here, everything else will fall away. Your health will fall away. Your psychological being will fall away. Your relationships will fall away. The responsible decisions that you're making, you probably won't think as rationally. So you have to decrease your stress level. So that's why I asked, what did you do for your own self-care this weekend? I'm hoping you did something, because that's essential. I remember Evelyn posted something. What are you doing for your own self-care? People were showing beaches and pedicures and all these different things. You need to do that. It's been shown that when you have positive relationships, you live longer. Who doesn't want to do that? You have better healing. So your immune system and your being inside internally with your organs is able to heal better and faster. It's easier to take on healthy behaviors. You have a greater sense of purpose. I know lots of people, I was that person walking around years ago, what's my purpose in life? What's my purpose in life? And if you didn't find that, right, with finding your own relationship and the positive relationships with others, then you get to that point. Encouraging your own personal growth, because you have people and your own self that are rooting you on. Hey, I see you and I want nothing but success for you. So they want you to personally grow, personally and professionally. Being part of something bigger than you. I don't know how many people believe this, but that's my belief. I am a small, probably even way smaller than that, a small, tiny piece of something way bigger than me. So that's something we have to keep in mind. It also helps you develop the growth mindset, and that's going to keep you sane, right? And the mental sanity. The words that we say to ourselves are very powerful. And what words have you created on the hamster wheel that's going in your mind? And I hope they're nothing but positive affirmations, because those negatives will destroy you. Encouraging kindness in your classroom. How are you doing that? Especially during this time, do you have kids writing maybe a little note or saying something at the end of the week to somebody that they noticed that they did something kind for them? Encouraging acceptance in your room and in your life will build those positive relationships, and it increases student learning, right? The positive relationships, that's what kids and humans thrive off of. So it will then have an impact on their academic learning, and it improves your own self-confidence. I put a mark by this because it was important for me to highlight. At the end of the day, we have to believe in ourselves to believe in anybody else. We have to believe in ourselves to serve the children and the families that we serve. So it, again, I keep saying it begins with you. So your own self-confidence is of most important here. And then last, it helps to make classrooms be a more welcoming environment. Who doesn't want to go to an environment where the people have positive relationships? I don't think anybody would sit here and raise their hand. Yeah, I want to, can you please sign me up to a job where the relationships aren't great and I feel nothing but stress when I go to my job? Nobody wants to do that. So that's why it's important to build a welcoming environment. So at the end of the day, I just want everybody to think, and I want everybody to take a minute to think about the special relationship that you had. And I know for a fact, I'm going to state this again, I know for a fact you can name at least one, and I'm sure many people will say, well, I can name more than one, and that's fine. If you could do that, then that's awesome for you, right? Everybody can't sit here and say they've had more than one. So if you have more than one, that's awesome. But I want you to name at least one educator who made a great impact on you. And I want you to type it in the comments. What's the one educator who you said, oh my gosh, right? Whether they saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, whether they just kept you going, whether they were positive all the time. But that is a special person who built a positive relationship with you, who probably helped you make more responsible decisions and choices. And that's why I'm saying these two competencies are super important to the classroom, because that person, and I bet you it's probably somebody either from 5, 10, 15, 20, even more years ago, right? At the end of the day, that person had a great impact and you still remember it. And it's because of that positive relationship. My lady is, I went to Catholic school. I told you guys this last time. Her name was Sister St. William. And she was my first grade teacher. And she just saw and heard me, right? She saw me, she heard me, she loved me. Something I can't say every teacher did, but she did it. And I kept in touch with her like throughout the years, even after I had graduated, from 8th grade. I still went back to check on her because she was just a beautiful soul. And she was a beautiful soul who cared about me. So I know you guys know you're different people. And just name that person. And then I would say, hey, have you looked up that person recently and reached out to them and just say, thank you, right? Thank you for seeing who I was and for believing in me. So Evelyn, do we have any comments of people with who their person is?
So we are about, we are on a little bit of a delay, but I can tell you mine while we wait to see if we get comments. But
Okay.
mine was my high school, I'll come off on camera. Mine was my high school government teacher. She was I just remember for the first time treating all of us like we were competent, and she just had respect for us. And that was huge. And it's something I talk to my boys about as they're in high school. And my youngest son and I, his freshman year in high school, we're talking about his favorite teacher.
Okay.
And really what it came down to was the fact that she treated them respectfully.
Yes.
And he just, and it was the same thing. They didn't treat them like they were little children, like they were stupid, like they, were an annoyance. She treated them with respect. And that was my same experience too. She treated us like we were competent and they showed us respect, which is kind of sad that isn't always right. So let's see. Corey does actually, it looks like, have a question here. Is for course's future. This may be too specific of a question, but for those of us who are open in communities that are hotspots, one thing that is putting pressure on relationship situation is we're due to confidentiality. We can't share all the details with our families and staff. Yep, exactly. For example, not giving details on who tests positive. Do you have suggestions on how we can maintain trust through this? And yes, and this is a tough one. I mean, we can't give details, and staff and families do get upset with us when we can't give details. So I don't know. Personally, I would say honesty, just being honest about it.
I think honesty and transparency is important, right? Why can't you run like a talk session with your people, right? Whether it's, I don't think people want to come in. Could you do a Zoom, right? Can you do something online? Zoom, I think, is free for 40 minutes, right? Do a 30-minute talk to families. They could log in. Hey, we're going to be doing a talk once a week to help them understand there's such thing as HIPAAs, right? And you didn't make HIPAA, but legally you will be in trouble. There's just certain information, and then maybe do a blip of there's a law called HIPAA, and per HIPAA, we cannot disclose certain things. And out of respect to that family, we cannot, just as if your family was experiencing something, we would not share your stuff either. I know that's how I've always talked about it, especially in regards to discipline at my school, whether it was suspension or expulsion, because a lot of parents are like, well, what did that person get? Which is so funny because it never should be about the other person, but it's okay. So at the end of the day, I can't tell you, because out of respect to you, if that was you in this situation, you wouldn't want me telling your business and your child's business. So that's what it is. You can't tell because there's laws called HIPAA, and you're ethical, right? You're showing your ethics by standing the ground of, I can't tell anybody, but I'm doing all that I can to keep myself, my staff, your family, and your children or child as safe as I can.
And I do, I've done exactly the same thing, what you're talking about. And I just would add to that, just being that transparency and honesty, like, look, I wish I could tell you guys everything, but I have to protect that staff member, or I have to protect that child, just like you would want me to protect you if you were in this situation.
Yes.
To add to the Zoom thing, that's something I actually have had to do. And if you're not familiar with the platform, you can record your Zoom episodes too. So, and you can even stream them live on Facebook, right? Like we're doing right now. We're on Zoom, but I'm streaming it live. So I have a family Facebook page. I have an employee Facebook page. And if you don't want to use Facebook, you can use a different platform, but you can take that video and post it where everybody can see it. Because I know a lot of people, not everybody's going to be able to make it live, but it needs to be there and it needs to come from you. That's one of the things I think is very important. It does need to come from you and make sure it's available.
And here's the other thing, you know, if you, I would say if you don't feel comfortable with saying, oh my gosh, you want me to do a talk, if you're not that person who's comfortable doing everybody, then get on Zoom, do a personal recording of you just with nobody and say, hi, this is whoever, I'm Future from the Future of SEL Center. And I hope and I'm wishing your family is staying healthy, your family is staying positive, and your family is staying mindful during these times. Our center has been getting a lot of questions in regards to those who are experiencing COVID within the center. According to HIPAA, and then give them a brief description, I am not ethically or legally bound to disclose that information, but I want you to know that we are doing everything that we can to keep everybody as safe as possible. Here are the procedures that we've put in place. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to me again if you have any questions. But the same respect I'm giving these families from their privacy, I will give you if this situation unfortunately ever happens to you and your family too.
Right. And one of the things too, I will add to that is when I do these type of presentations, I do remind people like, look, you guys, I am responsible to protect all 20 of my staff members and 190 children that are enrolled in my center. It gives them that perspective that it's not just about them. And a lot of times we have to change their mindset because they're stuck in the mindset of them and their situation only. So when you help them to see the big picture, it really does help them and brings them back in when they understand that big picture.
Yes. All right. So, and finishing up, how do I is a resource. At the beginning, I said, hey, I give you a resource. So take a picture. How do I is a game that you could, not a game, sorry. You can make it a game, but it's things that you could do with your staff, or you could turn it in to have the kids have discussions on this. So you could ask the kids, how do I disagree with a classmate? Has anybody ever taught them that, right? Everybody's not going to agree all the time and it's fine, but there's an art of disagreeing is what I would say. But if nobody's ever modeled or taught you that, the kids are never going to know. The next is, how do I agree with a classmate, right? Is it right? Do you want them just shouting out, they agree? Or is there an art in your classroom that you would like them to follow? Again, we have to teach them that. The next, how do I respectfully give my opinion in class? That's something that has to be taught. And then a lot of times, and I'm an advocate, I love collaboration. I think nobody will ever be able to produce the stuff that more than one person, right? Two people or more can produce. That's my thoughts on that. I love collaboration. Well, I mean, I like working by myself, but I would prefer to work with a group of people or another person at least. So I am hoping you're incorporating that into your classrooms. And when the kids are working in groups, have they been taught how to work in groups, right? What is everybody doing? How's everybody contributing? What should it look like? Do we take turns? What does it look like? And if they're not taught, then if you see chaos, you have to, again, go back to yourself and say, I probably didn't teach them. And the last would be, how do I respond when someone is not being productive in that group? So maybe you have group assignments, but if one person is not doing what they were asked to do, then what and how should the kids act and react? So here's some other activities. You can take a picture. I have other activities, but obviously contact me on this stuff. Relationship building activities. So teamwork obviously is important, but at the end of the day, are you inspiring your students to work together as teams? I don't know. Is it all individual because I'm not there in your classrooms? And it's important, like I said prior, discussing the communication and practicing teamwork involved with the impressive performance as a group. The others are, I said at the beginning of this class meetings. Do you foster a community within your classes? And that's why I say it's an awesome thing to start out maybe in a circle, or circles might not be the best idea now, but start out at the beginning with a routine. And you, at the beginning of class, you check in with each of the students, or you check in with your staff. How is everybody feeling today? And there's many different ways that you could talk about the emotions. It could be a 2-word check-in. It could be you're putting the emotion wheel up that I discussed, I think 2 series Mondays ago, in talking about how are they feeling. But it's circle time to get an understanding for where's everybody coming from right now in this moment in this class. The other thing is, do you promote asking for help? Do you model as an adult in those classrooms, or even at your center, if you're the director or the owner, that you too have struggles and you need help? Because if you're standing there and never asking for help, well, it's going to be hard for the people that work under you to say, but I need your help, because you're not modeling. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to struggle, because helping others will then often boost our moods, which I said 2 or 3 previous slides before. It's been proven. And then it helps self-esteem, and it gives you a sense of belonging and well-being. So have that discussion with your students of, can you help me? Whether it's collecting scissors or passing out pencils or paper, something, in which way can they help? And then cooperative games. There's lots of cooperative games that you could get for your centers, but are you incorporating that into their being so that they do understand they have to cooperate, they have to take turns, they have to work in groups to be successful in life? These are skills that are never going to go away. So how are you building the critical thinking skills and the ability for them to communicate in positive manners to benefit the whole? Because again, I am because we are. And wrapping it up is we have a chance to get it right. And I keep saying that, but there's laws and there's policies that you all are in charge of. Now the laws, maybe not so, but you're in charge of policies at your own places. And that emerges out of your own consciousness. And we are all part of this leadership that can make the changes. And it starts with you. And I keep asking people, what will your own legacy be, right? What are you going to say in 5-10 years from now when you look back, I did this, or I implemented that, or these were the actions that I took because I knew I could no longer work in the status quo in which I was working with, because I had too much information now to say it's okay for me to stay the way I am, and that I made the chance and the choice to do this. So remember, at the end of the day, positive relationships and responsible decisions are often because of self-awareness and because of emotions. And kids and families do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And showing how much you care and empathy right now is essential. So I put this quote because it spoke to me, and I'm hoping it speaks to you too. A great relationship is about 2 things. First, appreciating the similarities. We all have similarities. At the end of the day, even if the similarity is basic as we all are living through COVID and we all are living through civil unrest. That's two, even if it's as basic as that. But the second in any great relationship is respecting the differences, because we all bring them. And that's why we're in civil unrest right now, right? We're different, but we're beautiful. And how are you celebrating and uplifting all those differences? So on the last slide of the flash recap and wrapping up, key concepts. Advancing our world is built on providing the children we serve the skills to build positive relationships. That's what it is, right? Those positive relationships have lifelong effects on those students, whether they're positive or not so positive. And in addition to giving them the skills to be able to make responsible decisions for their life. So SEL is how we bridge those things together. And SEL and equity, it starts with you first. And I keep telling people, even when I'm on anywhere, right, in public or on a social platform, I can't have a conversation in regards to many things, especially about race or equity or social emotional learning, if you haven't began with you first. If you haven't done an internal journey first, it's going to be difficult for me to have an honest, vulnerable, courageous conversation. So the question that I want everybody to keep asking themselves is, what are your convictions? What are they, and what are you standing on? And are you living right now in those convictions? Are you living in the things that you say you're doing, or are you saying you do them and not doing them? So I would just ask you what's resonating with you and what questions do you have, because we only have, after this one, there's only one more time together. It's next Monday. And I've loved my time here. So if you have questions, I want you to please reach out to me. And the other question that I would have for you is, I just want to get a better understanding of the early childhood centers and the preschools. So I'm wondering and hoping that there would be a few people, whether that's 2 or 5 people, that would be willing to talk with me, whether it's individually or in small group. I'd ask for like 30 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking for. Just so I could get a better insight on the understandings of daycares and preschools, of what you're experiencing right now, and what help, can we provide as a nation, just to see, because I know the struggles that K-12 is going through, but you're sometimes a different animal. And I need to have an understanding of that. I understand my one center that I sent my children to, but I don't understand large scale. And there's lots of stuff that is happening. So if you could either email Evelyn, I would hope that you could email me directly, because I'm hoping to have those talks this week by Friday wrapped up, so that I can incorporate the information that people have given me into our last and final session, so that I can give you what you need. Evelyn, do you have anything to say?
I would just add that it would be great to get the volunteers to contact you. I will put your contact information, your email address in the show description, so that anybody who wants to get a hold of you can get a hold of you just through there directly. I think that'd be great. And again, thank you so much for taking your time to do this, for providing this to our community, and just trying to really help with this, of just helping us to really understand that social emotional component of equity and true diversity.
Yep. Anytime. So as again, I said, I'm seeking an understanding. I'd love to talk to people. I promise I won't take more than 30 minutes, because I will talk for, if you let me, I'll literally talk for hours, because I like learning about people. That's what I like doing, whether you're 2 or 92. I think I've said that before. And I need to have a better understanding, right? Because if I have a better understanding, then I too can help, as Evelyn's been a voice for you, right? In talking to different people that do make the laws, then I could be a voice. And involved in Rotary, and I'm involved in other things that I know people. So if I could be an advocate for you and the things that you need, then I'd like to be able to do that, because again, at the end of the day, we are all in this together. And even though I might not service your child, every child is mine, because I want every child to be heard, seen, safe, and happy. That's all I want at the end of the day.
Right. Yes. And as we were talking last night about it, just what is our legacy? And for you and I both, a lot of what we do here is just that ultimate vision for our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more people we touch and help, the more children that we are affecting in the long run.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I am going to stop the live.